There is an ancient farming system in the high Andes that produces 4 times the yield of modern agriculture. It requires no pumps, no pipes, no irrigation equipment. The fields have not been watered in 800 years. NASA satellites photographed the geometric pattern stretching across 120,000 hectares. Archaeologists confirm the system fed 500,000 people. Today, rebuilding these fields would violate water rights laws in almost every country on Earth. And at the end of this video, you will know exactly how to build this system that can quadruple your yields without buying a single product. If hidden agricultural knowledge fascinates you, you are in the right place. Subscribe and welcome to Secrets Beneath Nature. Travel to the shores of Lake Titicaca in Peru and Bolivia. You stand at 3,800 meters above sea level. The air is thin. The nights are brutal. Temperatures drop below freezing on 300 nights every year. Every agricultural textbook says this environment sits at the absolute margin of food production. Crops should fail here. Frost should kill everything. The growing season should be too short and too cold for any meaningful harvest. Now look at the landscape through the window of a small aircraft. Below you, stretching toward the horizon, geometric patterns emerge from the brown earth. Raised platforms run in parallel lines. Dark water fills the channels between them. The patterns repeat for kilometers in every direction. This is not natural. This is engineering. This is the Waru system, and it supported one of the most sophisticated civilizations in pre-Columbian America. Clark Erickson from the University of Pennsylvania spent decades documenting these fields. His aerial photography in 1988 revealed the true scale of what the Tiwanaku civilization built. 120,000 hectares of raised field agriculture. That equals nearly 300,000 acres. For comparison, it matches the entire agricultural output of a small American state. Built without metal tools, maintained without machinery, productive without synthetic inputs of any kind. The basic structure appears almost primitive at first glance. Farmers constructed raised planting platforms between 5 and 15 meters wide. The platforms stretched 50 to 200 meters in length. They elevated the planting surface 1/2 to 1.5 meters above the surrounding terrain. Water filled the channels between platforms, creating a network of shallow canals 2 to 4 meters across. No pumps moved this water. No pipes distributed it. Seasonal flooding from Lake Titicaca and mountain runoff filled the channels naturally. The water simply stayed there. It did not irrigate the crops in any conventional sense. The roots of potato plants on the raised platforms never touched the canal water. Visitors who see the system for the first time ask the obvious question: if the water does not irrigate the plants, what exactly does it do? The answer required modern thermal physics to fully understand. Researchers from the Smithsonian Institution published their findings in 1989. Alan Kalata and Charles Ortloff placed temperature sensors throughout rehabilitated Waru fields. They measured air temperature above the raised platforms. They measured water temperature in the canals. They recorded data through freezing nights when conventional crops would die. The results revealed engineering genius hidden in apparent simplicity. Water possesses an exceptionally high specific heat capacity. It absorbs thermal energy efficiently and releases that energy slowly. During daylight hours, sunlight warmed the canal water to 15 or 20 degrees Celsius. When night fell and air temperatures plummeted, the water retained its warmth. Canal water remained 4 to 6 degrees warmer than the freezing air above it. That temperature difference changed everything. Warm water radiates infrared heat. The canals functioned as heating elements, running alongside every planting bed. Crops on the raised platforms received thermal radiation from water on both sides. The research team documented air temperatures on the raised platforms remaining 2 to 4 degrees Celsius warmer than the surrounding landscape. 2 to 4 degrees does not sound dramatic until you understand what frost does to potato plants. At -2 degrees Celsius, ice crystals form inside plant cells. The cells rupture. The plant dies within hours. A field that experiences -4 degrees will produce nothing. A field that stays at -1 degree will survive. The Waru system created a microclimate just warm enough to prevent frost damage on 300 freezing nights per year. The thermal battery effect alone would justify calling this system sophisticated engineering. But the Tiwanaku farmers built something more elegant still. The canals also functioned as nutrient production facilities. Algae and aquatic plants grew in the standing water throughout the growing season. Organic matter accumulated in the canal sediments. Researchers analyzing this sediment found nitrogen and phosphorus concentrations 3 to 5 times higher than surrounding soils. Farmers periodically dredged the canals. They spread the dark, nutrient-rich muck across the raised platforms. The system manufactured its own fertilizer. No external inputs required, no purchased amendments, no synthetic nitrogen produced in factories burning natural gas. The canals grew fertilizer while simultaneously protecting crops from frost. Fish thrived in the canal water. Aquatic invertebrates multiplied. The system produced protein alongside carbohydrates. One integrated design accomplished what modern agriculture achieves only through separate industries operating independently. Heating systems, irrigation infrastructure, fertilizer production, aquaculture operations. The Waru system unified all 4 functions in a single elegant structure. The productivity data silenced any remaining skepticism. Ignacio Garaycochea led agricultural rehabilitation research for the Peruvian government in 1986. His team rebuilt Waru fields in the community of Huara near Lake Titicaca. They planted potatoes on the raised platforms using traditional methods, and they planted potatoes on adjacent flat fields using conventional methods. They measured the harvest weights precisely. Rehabilitated Waru fields produced 8 to 14 tons of potatoes per hectare. Adjacent conventional fields produced 1 to 4 tons per hectare. The ancient system outperformed modern agriculture by 200 to 400%. No tractors, no synthetic fertilizers, no chemical pesticides, no mechanical irrigation, just water sitting in channels, releasing heat through freezing nights, accumulating nutrients in dark sediments. These numbers should have revolutionized global agriculture. They did not. The knowledge remained buried in technical journals read only by specialists. The system that fed 500,000 people for over 1,000 years barely appears in agricultural education curricula anywhere on Earth. The Spanish arrived in the 1530s. They brought European diseases that killed 80 to 90% of the indigenous population within 2 generations. They disrupted the communal labor systems that maintained the raised fields. Colonial administrators imposed European farming models on landscapes that European farming could not sustain. The Waru system fell into disrepair. Canals filled with sediment and platforms eroded. Within a century, the most productive agricultural system in the high Andes had largely vanished. The knowledge survived in fragments. Indigenous communities in remote areas continued traditional practices on small scales. Elders remembered what their grandparents had taught them, but colonial and later Republican governments dismissed indigenous agricultural knowledge as primitive. Development agencies promoted input-intensive farming. Extension services trained farmers to purchase seeds, fertilizers, and equipment from commercial suppliers. The ancient knowledge generated no profits for anyone selling agricultural products. Modern legal structures created additional barriers. Water rights laws developed in Europe and North America assume individual property owners hold rights to specific water quantities for specific uses. The Waru system requires collective water management across multiple properties. Flooding fields intentionally violates water use regulations in most jurisdictions. Maintaining standing water in agricultural settings gets classified as wasting water in regions where every drop carries legal and economic weight. A farmer in Peru today who wants to rebuild Waru fields faces bureaucratic obstacles at every turn. Water permits assume irrigation delivery, not passive retention. Property boundaries fragment landscapes that require unified hydrological management. The communal decision-making structures that maintain these systems for 1,000 years have no legal standing in modern administrative frameworks. The economics work against traditional knowledge in subtler ways as well. Synthetic fertilizer represents a $200 billion global market. Irrigation equipment generates over $10 billion annually. Agricultural chemicals constitute a $250 billion industry. These corporations fund research. They support agricultural extension programs. They advertise in farming publications. They lobby governments on agricultural policy. Waru Waru eliminates the need for products these industries sell. A farmer using raised field agriculture purchases no fertilizer. The system manufactures nutrients in canal sediments. A farmer using thermal mass frost protection purchases no greenhouse heating equipment. The water provides warmth for free. A farmer whose fields produce 4 times conventional yields needs less land, less equipment, less of everything that agricultural supply companies profit from selling. No corporate entity earns returns from farmers applying freely available knowledge to freely available water and soil. No patent protects the Waru Waru design. No trademark restricts who can use the name. The techniques exist in the public domain. Academic researchers pursue funding from sources that favor technologies with commercial applications. The incentive structures of modern agricultural science systematically exclude investigation of methods that generate no intellectual property. Climate change adds bitter irony to this suppression. Global temperatures are rising, but the thermal instability hits high-altitude regions hardest. Farmers in mountain zones worldwide report increasingly unpredictable frost events. Growing seasons shift. Traditional planting calendars no longer align with actual weather patterns. The conventional response involves more technology purchases, more greenhouse construction, more heating systems, more climate-controlled environments requiring energy inputs. The Waru Waru system provided climate adaptation through passive thermal engineering 1,500 years ago. It required no external energy. It operated through basic physics that function identically, regardless of how climate patterns shift. Water absorbs heat during the day. Water releases heat at night. This principle worked in the year 500. It works today. It will work in 2100. Development agencies designing climate adaptation strategies for vulnerable mountain communities rarely mention raised field agriculture. The technical literature exists. Peer-reviewed research confirms the thermal physics. Yield data demonstrates superior productivity, yet the knowledge remains confined to specialist journals, while consultants recommend purchasing products from agricultural supply corporations. Not everyone has abandoned the old knowledge. Since the 1980s, small organizations have worked with indigenous communities to rebuild Waru Waru fields. Thousands of hectares have been restored in Peru and Bolivia. Farmers report improved food security and reduced vulnerability to frost damage. They explain how the system produces year after year without requiring cash expenditure on inputs. The permaculture movement has begun incorporating raised bed principles into designs for temperate and tropical climates. Thermal mass concepts from Andean agriculture appear in sustainable farming literature. Online communities share documentation of traditional techniques. The knowledge spreads through networks that operate outside mainstream agricultural institutions. The principles apply beyond the high Andes. Anywhere water and soil exist together, thermal mass effects can moderate temperature extremes. Raised beds with adjacent water channels provide frost protection in any climate where frost threatens crops. The scale adapts from landscape transformation to backyard implementation. A gardener anywhere on Earth can apply these physics. No purchase is required to access this knowledge. No subscription unlocks the techniques. No corporation holds rights to water-absorbing heat and releasing it slowly. The engineering that fed 500,000 people for 1,000 years belongs to everyone willing to learn and apply it. The farmers who built the Waru Waru system left no written records explaining their methods. They passed knowledge through practice. Generation taught generation in fields where cold nights tested every design decision. The system that emerged from centuries of refinement represented accumulated wisdom that modern science required expensive instruments to verify and explain. 800 years of continuous productivity. 400% yield improvements over conventional methods. Zero irrigation infrastructure. Zero synthetic inputs. Zero energy requirements beyond sunlight warming water during the day. The raised platforms still visible from aircraft over Lake Titicaca represent more than archaeological curiosity. They represent proof that human agricultural knowledge peaked in some ways before the Industrial Revolution began. They represent evidence that older is not always inferior. They represent a challenge to assumptions about progress that equate technological complexity with effectiveness. The question worth asking is why this knowledge remains hidden. Why do agricultural universities not teach waru alongside modern irrigation engineering? Why do climate adaptation programs not prioritize passive thermal systems over energy-intensive alternatives? Why do development agencies promote purchased inputs when superior free alternatives exist in the historical record? The answers involve money. They involve institutional structures. They involve assumptions so deeply embedded in modern thinking that most people never question them. The belief that newer means better. The belief that purchased means effective. The belief that indigenous knowledge requires validation by Western science before it deserves respect. The water in those Andean canals released heat through freezing nights for 15 centuries. The physics never changed. The engineering never failed. The knowledge never disappeared entirely despite sustained efforts to replace it with profitable alternatives. Now you know what existed. Now you know why it worked. Now you know why you probably never heard about it before today. Subscribe to Secrets Beneath Nature and watch the next video to discover what other knowledge has been buried beneath assumptions about progress.